It seems like it's going to be Pep Guardiola's last dance for Manchester City in the Champions League. And the fixtures, I mean, what are your thoughts on these fixtures? Let's talk about these fixtures.
It's a difficult set of fixtures.
Get out of here.
It's a well-rounded set of European fixtures, as Manchester City always have. They always have a sort of tough group, and this has followed exactly the same path. No. They're quite easy. I just did a Frank Lampard there, going from laughing to serious. But you would expect City to come away with some very positive results here. They've got Inter at home, Bratislava away, Prague, Sporting Lisbon, Feyenoord, Juventus, PSG, and Club Brugge. I think City are quite heavily favourites in every single one of those games. And I'd be very, very surprised if they don't come out in that top 8 of the group table. I think, as you mentioned, Pep's last dance, I think we spoke at the beginning of this season, actually, about who's going to win the league. And a lot of the narrative around City was, can they do it again? Because they did 4 in a row. That was the whole difficult thing. That was the motivating factor. Before then, it was, can we be the second team to do the treble? That was the motivating factor. And I guess now the motivating factor would be, unless Pep Guardiola does extend his contract, can we give Pep a final send-off? If he wins this, of course, then he's tied with Sir Alex Ferguson on 2 Champions Leagues. And I think that's going to be the motivating factor for City. I think, apart from Real Madrid, I think if Real Madrid weren't in the tournament, you'd be thinking City are massive favourites. I think that Real Madrid are probably the only team who can come up against City on their day and beat them. So it's going to be an interesting one to see what happens.
I think the Fergie topic is interesting because obviously if he was to win this Champions League with Man City, he'd have won 2. Fergie won 2 at Manchester United as well. Would that make him potentially the undisputed greatest manager of all time? Because it's an interesting debate. I actually think Manchester United fans really believe Fergie is the greatest, and you have to give Fergie his praise. He was around for so many years, but we're never going to see that again. So
I just think it's such a difficult conversation to have. I think that Pep Guardiola is undoubtedly the greatest coach football has ever seen. And there's no question about it. You look at what he's done, and then you look at his coaching tree as well in terms of the managers that spawned off of him and are successful at clubs all across Europe. You look at Fergie's coaching tree, and it stinks. Name one player that played under Fergie or
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is actually all right, you know.
Yeah,
and now they know.
But that's the best. That's the best. Like his coaching, because he was a man manager. And he had his players and they went out and they did the job. But in terms of communicating the football philosophy, I'm not saying that Fergie didn't have a philosophy, but when Vicente Del Bosque played against Manchester United when he was Real Madrid manager in 2000, after Man United won the Champions League, he called Fergie's setup tactical anarchy, which was basically like they just go out there and they try and get the job done. And he changed that in his latter stages at Manchester United, and we saw them do well in the Champions League. They won it in 2008, got to final in 2009, got to final in 2011. But for such a great manager, for Ferguson to only have 2 Champions League is a slight blemish on his record. When you look at Pep Guardiola, though, for a manager who has been so dominant when it comes to league football, there's only been, I think, 3 managers in the history of football that have taken league titles off Guardiola. That's Antonio Conte in Pep's first season in England. That's Jurgen Klopp as well in the 1920 season. And Jose Mourinho got 1 at Real Madrid. And Guardiola's been a manager for 17 seasons. He's won so much wherever he's gone, but he's only got 3 Champions Leagues. 2 of them were the greatest footballer of all time, and the third one was at Man City, the treble, which I think was his most impressive. And so I think for him and his legacy, I think he doesn't need another one. He doesn't need anything. He's one of the greatest of all time. But I think that he knows, looking at it, that he probably should have won more Champions League. Because if you look at those campaigns as well, every single one of those seasons, maybe barring 1 or 2, his team goes in as favourites of that competition. Yeah. And to only have 3, I think he will look at that as a slight gap in his resume.
I think it's just an incredibly difficult trophy to win, and that's why Sir Alex Ferguson only won 2, and that's why Pep Guardiola's only won 2 so far. I think the debate around Sir Alex Ferguson and Pep Guardiola, it frustrates me a little bit. And obviously I am a City fan, so I'm going to back Pep. The far-reaching football philosophy that Guardiola has instilled has infected the entirety of football. We might get frustrated about it. Sometimes
you get frustrated about it.
No. And I agree that sometimes it might make certain games a little bit more boring. But he has changed football. He has completely revolutionised the game. And I think one thing that really frustrates me, and I don't think it genuinely is a conversation which happens between longer standing football fans. I think it happens on Twitter quite a lot. But it's that Pep Guardiola is this checkbook manager. Well, it's not really the case, and we were discussing it before. Okay, lots of teams know that City have money, so they'll put a premium on certain players. There's very, very rarely been, under Pep Guardiola's reign, a player that City have bought where the player didn't know where to go and City outbid another team. Pep Guardiola has bought players who were on the peripheries of being greats. Apart from Erling Haaland, they were all players who were slightly unheard of or known in the sort of lower echelons of not the top players, and he has made them into greats, and he's made it into the greatest team of all time. Sir Alex Ferguson, if we're being completely honest, is far more of that checkbook manager. There was not a general philosophy of football that he stuck to. As you mentioned, he had one set formation, and more often than not, he would buy very expensive players to fit into those positions, and that's why Manchester United won trophies. So I find it a bit disrespectful to Guardiola to even have the conversation.
Is it the same debate, philosophy and greatness? Like, I agree. I actually completely agree that I'm from that era. Manchester United didn't play attractive football all the time. They had what I think a lot of people sort of like beat Guardiola with a little bit, is the greatest players who do great things on occasions when they needed them to. But then I don't think that translates to anyone being a bad manager. I actually genuinely think the comparison in terms of philosophies and coaches is between Klopp and Fergie. But obviously Klopp is not as successful, but in terms of like ideas and what they wanted to achieve with their teams, they're basically pretty identical, both really good man managers. That's where I put Guardiola like above all of that and go like, he is a great man manager that he doesn't get that much praise for it. Yeah. He's the best coach, the best philosophy. And obviously there's the argument about, has he always had the best players? I think yes, but some of those he's developed as well. Yeah. But then you could argue Fergie also developed Beckham, Giggs, Gary Neville. Rio was already brilliant, to be fair. Ronaldo.
Okay, this is where we are going to disagree. I will give, and the job that Pep Guardiola has done at Man City is absolutely incredible. If we're just judging Premier League legacies, then I think we can go machine for machine. But let's not forget who he was managing at Barcelona and the keys that he was given to the kingdom. He was managing Lionel Messi, he was managing Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, some of the greatest players of all time that not only did at club level, did at international level as well. Then he goes to Bayern Munich, who were literally fresh off of winning the Champions League. And it's a given that you're going to win Bundesliga every single year, and he didn't win the Champions League there. And he's gone to City, and that's where he deserves the most credit. He's gone and dominated the Premier League like no one's dominated before. Alex Ferguson dominated the Premier League, but not as concentrated as this. Not in terms of a case you go to every single season and you just know City are the favourites. Nobody thought they could do this. And think about the naysayers when Pep Guardiola came to the Premier League. People were like, you can't play this style of football. In the 16-17 season, I remember him getting absolutely battered. I remember Chelsea won the league that year. And people say you can't play the style of football in England. And he changed the face of English football. You go and watch non-league games now and keepers are playing with their feet. You would never seen that before Pep Guardiola. So in terms of like transformative effect on football, I'd give that to Pep Guardiola. But in terms of just resume, Fergie, when he took over Manchester United, they were not a juggernaut. He built it from the ground up and earned the right to spend that money. Man United weren't the most commercially successful club in the world when Fergie took over. He built that. And so when you call him a checkbook manager, I think that's very, very harsh because he built Manchester United into what they were. Pep Guardiola did take over a City team that 2 years prior did win the Premier League.
Then the debate comes to this whole Champions League thing. If Guardiola wins the Champions League this year, he's now level on Champions Leagues with Fergie. He has obviously won more because of Barcelona. In the Premier League, in terms of, if obviously he won't stay in the Prem for 30 years or 20 years, so you can't compare. But in terms of how many he's won, you just said he dominates the Premier League. Does he have to win this Champions League to be concerned? Apart from with you and I, the wider public goes, he is the greatest.
I think with Guardiola, I think that the sort of discourse that there has been, I think almost nothing that he can do will win over the people who don't want to be won over. And your argument there is very retrospective. He had Xavi, Iniesta and Messi. Who would Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets and Messi be without Guardiola? He makes everyone better. Now the whole thing is, oh, well, of course he won the league. He's got Kevin De Bruyne. Kevin De Bruyne, the £50 million flop, who everyone laughed at Guardiola for buying.
But that's what
everything is retrospective when it comes to Guardiola.
We're aligned though. The job he's done at Man City, I will never denigrate that because nobody thought that this is possible in the Premier League. Not one person thought they could come and do this in the Premier League. But if we're talking about the job he did at Barcelona and we're talking about the job that he did at Bayern Munich, Barcelona won the Champions League before Pep Guardiola in 2006. He took over in 2008. They were still a very good team that had the greatest player of all time already, Lionel Messi. He joined the Bayern Munich team that literally the year before won the Champions League, and he brings in Lewandowski and doesn't win the Champions League in his 3 or 4 seasons there. And then he goes to Man City and he changes the game. And I'll give him credit for that because, like you mentioned, not once apart from bringing in Erling Haaland did Man City sign a player that we thought, oh, he is the greatest player in the world. Yeah. He's made these players. Nathan Ake was... I saw him at Chelsea. He was not thought highly of. I saw Kevin De Bruyne not being thought highly of for Chelsea. I've seen his players on the periphery. Carl Walker, he was not wanted by
John
Spurs.
Stones, a laughing stock of England.
Like there are so many players that he made better at City. So the job he's done at City, I will never take it away from him. I do think that if he wins the Champions League this year at Man City, there is no conversation. It is done. But at this moment in time, I think it's neck and neck.
All right, let us know in the comments whether City will win the Champions League, if that Champions League will be the deciding factor to make Pep Guardiola the greatest manager of all time.
Hearing into Man City's 115 financial charges begins the independent hearing into Manchester City's alleged 115 breaches of Premier League financial regulations finally began on Monday. ESPN previously reported the trial would begin on Monday, with the hearing dubbed by British media as the sports trial of the century. It is expected to last for around 2 months. The aim is for the final verdict, including any appeal, to be completed by the end of the 2024-25 season. City, who have won the English title a record 4 times in a row, were referred to an independent commission in February 2023, with the various charges dating from 2009 to 2018. The club have always denied any wrongdoing. Should City be found guilty of some or all of the charges, they could face penalties or huge fines, points deductions, or even relegation from the Premier League. That would also put a huge asterisk over one of the most successful periods of any club in English history. City have won 8 Premier League titles, 1 Champions League, 3 FA Cups, 6 League Cups, the UEFA Super Cup and the FIFA Club World Cup since being bought by Sheikh Mansour's Abu Dhabi United Group in 2008. On Friday, manager Pep Guardiola welcomed the start of the trial, saying that City are innocent until proven guilty. It starts soon and then hopefully finishes soon. An independent panel will decide, and I am looking forward to the decision, Guardiola told a news conference. We're going to see. I know what people are looking forward to, what they expect. I know what I read for many, many years. I am not a lawyer. Striker Erling Haaland is not a lawyer. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. The charges City face include failing to provide accurate financial information, failing to provide full disclosure about player and manager remuneration, breaches of Premier League and UEFA financial fair play regulations, and a failure to cooperate with Premier League investigations themselves in the dock over alleged financial infringements in 2020. They were banned from the Champions League for 2 years by UEFA for overstating sponsorship revenue between 2012 and 2016, but they successfully appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. City said at the time of the referral to the Premier League's independent commission that they were surprised by the league's issuing of these alleged breaches. With the hearing, which will be conducted privately, starting and likely to continue for many weeks, it will inevitably put a cloud over the Premier League season as City go for a 5th title in succession. Whatever the verdict, either side could appeal, threatening to drag the process into early summer in 2025. Everton and Nottingham Forest had points deducted last season for breaching the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules, although Leicester City avoided a similar fate after winning an appeal against the Premier League. Man City News Live trial latest as club under threat of expulsion from Premier League. Manchester City's landmark hearing with the Premier League will begin today. The hearing into Manchester City's charges for allegedly breaking Premier League financial rules will finally begin today. The reigning champions were charged and referred to an independent commission last February after a 4-year investigation. City were hit with 115 charges, with the alleged offenses said to have taken place between 2009 and 2018. They have strongly denied any wrongdoing and have said that their case is supported by a comprehensive body of irrefutable evidence. The hearing into the charges will take place entirely in private, with details likely to be few and far between throughout the process. It is expected to run for around 10 weeks, paving the way for a verdict to be announced in early 2025. If found guilty, a range of punishments could be handed down to City, including a limitless fine and expulsion from the Premier League. Man City charges hearing live updates. Lord Panic arrives as location revealed. Follow live updates of Manchester City's legal hearing against the Premier League as the club attempts to clear their name of the 115 allegations of financial wrongdoing. Well, it's here and it's unlikely to be pretty. Today, Manchester City will finally begin their legal battle with the Premier League over the 115 allegations of financial wrongdoing that have hung over the club since they were leveled back in February 2023. Man City vehemently deny breaching regulations and are confident they will be proved correct. The Premier League is also holding its ground too, so expect to see appeals lodged against the verdict given the seismic impact any outcome will have.